don't have many genuine fears in my life. There's a few. One of those is, in fact, clowns.
Minions! We're going to steal the moon! Yeah! I've been dreaming of this moment since we started this podcast. Our first Halloween special. And we look like a bunch of jabronis dressed up. For reference, I actually was gonna put a Magneto helmet on and just call it a day. And then
Bro
when I
did not think
realized
through the logistics of that.
I didn't think through the logistics of the headphones and the stupid helmet. And so I was like, well, what can I throw together? And I just go, I have a black shirt and I have a gray scarf. I'm gonna be Gru because that's all I got. I literally am like wearing shorts right now. Like that's how much thought I put into this. I threw this together last second.
And I want to have it on the record, by the way, that Carson is the one that had the idea to do a Halloween special and dress up. And then, granted, all I had to do was throw on a onesie, and I have a few onesies, but I went with Chewbacca because I always have the Star Wars helmet on. But Carson's the one that had the idea of doing the costumes and put less thought into it than I did, and I just threw on a onesie.
Well, I did put thought into it, and then I didn't think through the logistics of that thought. And then we got here, and I was like, oh crap, well, I gotta throw something together. I'm like, Gru, good enough. Let's go with that. Sure. You know?
Good enough.
But this is exciting. I am a little uncomfortable. The shirt's also like a little bit tight. This actually might have been like a shirt I wore in high school. I think I just threw on, and I am not the same size that I was in high school. In fact, I've grown quite a bit, so it's a little snug.
And the unfortunate part is, by the time this podcast posts, it's gonna be like Halloween's on a Friday this year, so it'll be 2 days later, 3 days later.
Yeah, somewhere around there. Anyway, hey buddy, I'm glad you dressed up. I'm glad you're indulging me in this.
I have a fan blowing right now, which I hope doesn't pick up on the microphone because it's so hot.
I mean, I haven't heard anything yet. Question for you. So I've been on Instagram, and this is a question I've been actually wanting to ask you just like off camera. I just haven't done it yet. As a kid, you know, I'm talking like Avengers Endgame time. You know, everything was so hype, and we were looking for
So like 5 years ago.
5-6 years ago.
I mean, I guess technically we were kids at that point. So yeah, that's
We're still technically kids. It counts, but you know we were looking for the next big set leak. You know, looking at photos, looking for this, looking for that. We scourged the internet. We listened to freaking YouTubers talk about, oh yeah, it's a leaked plot leak. Let's do this. Like this is what it's gonna be. And I sit here now as somebody who, you know, goes on Instagram and just gets absolutely bombarded with post after post after post for Spider-Man Brand New Day. Now, some of it's not all bad. Some of it's not. Like, you know, you have the big action sequence when I think he's on like a big armored vehicle, or no, it's a tank.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry, it's a tank. I don't know what it is exactly.
Close enough, yeah.
Like, okay, so we know there's a tank that's gonna be a movie. Big deal, big whoop. That's fine. I'm okay getting spoiled that. The thing that I hate is that we are now getting ideas of who Sadie Sink's character is in the film because you actively see her in a costume that's completely related to the Punisher. Do you know which photo I'm talking about? Have you seen this photo?
No, I haven't. All I've seen is AI photos of Sadie Sink in different Spider-Man outfits, honestly.
So I've seen a lot of photos with her and like the skull bulletproof vest on, like what the Punisher would have. And I'm very confused about that because, well, first off, there's a double-sided argument to this, and I'll get to that in a minute. If this photo is real, which more likely than not it is, I would have liked to have had that be a surprise. Because leading up to this, I would have thought easily, oh, she's probably playing an alternate version of Gwen Stacy. Or she's playing an alternate version of MJ. Or one of the Spider-Woman, for all I care. I don't know. One of the more famous characters, and they would have wanted to keep that a secret, especially because it's Sadie Sink. I don't understand why we can't just like stop taking set leak photos. And why can we not stop? And I used to not be mad at this, so I understand that I might get some flack for saying this because I myself used to say you know, like, oh, these are great. I'm getting all the information. But now I sit here like, I kind of want to be surprised by things. And that was just a
I
big
mean,
bummer for me.
I don't know why you're roping me into the whole we looked
Well,
for set leaks. I've never liked leaks or set leaks or anything of the sort. I've always been anti get like I want as little information before the movie comes out as humanly possible. That's like always been my stance on things. And so I have heard, I don't know if they're official reports, but that there was a period of time where all of the set leaks or the set photos that were coming out were actually like official. Like they hired photographers to take set leak photos to leak out there. There was
sure.
quite a few reputable people talking about that being a possibility. I still don't love it, but like you said, that was the stuff like the tank and him swinging, nothing really of substance. Now that we're past that point, anything beyond that is more of a yeah, like actual set leak photo, and I don't like either of them. I just straight up I don't get why we need information before a movie comes out. Like, I'm gonna be honest, and I'm talking to the audience here. If you need a set leak or you need a photo of a character to get you to go see a movie, you're looking at it all wrong. You really are. Like, it shouldn't be, oh, it needs to be this character this way for me to go to the movies. No, the point of a movie is to be surprised and delighted and go along with the twists and turns, even if it's not a movie that has big twists and turns or a mystery movie. Just in general, for movies, the enjoyment of the movie is finding out the story as you watch it in theaters or at your home, not, oh, I already know who this character is, who this character is, who this character is. I already know all the plot lines. Now I'm just watching it play out. That's not what a movie is. So I've never understood this obsession with more information and why studios feel like they need to give us more information because, oh, that's what's going to get butts in seats. No, making good movies is what's going to get butts in seats. And that's all we need. And you can make the argument that we're talking about Marvel now, but this is not just a Marvel problem. This is a movie problem.
Yes.
Marvel, Star Wars, and the, I guess I should say, Disney properties face this more than anything else because they have more leakable information that a larger audience cares about. But this isn't just an exclusive to them thing. And I don't understand it. And it infuriates me because if you're an audience member or you're a movie viewer who feels like they are owed this information in advance, or that's the only thing that's going to get you out to go see the movie, I'm not going to say you don't deserve to see the movie because that's just a terrible take to have. But I really think you need to reevaluate your opinions and your thought process.
Yeah. It's getting frustrating to me. And especially now, because we live in a world, and this is the second part of what I was getting at, is I will see set leak photos. And you can sometimes tell if they are, but sometimes you can't. But a lot of things nowadays can be faked out by AI
Yeah,
and to a believable point. And
terrifyingly.
it can fool so many people. And so I don't understand how we continue to post these, oh, it's a set leak photos, this and that, spreading misinformation on top of that. And sometimes we're convincing these big corporations that things are not what they are. And I'm not saying that this was AI, and this might be a completely different type of example. Do you remember when the Mandos, I think it was Mandos season 3 trailer dropped? Do you remember that trailer at all?
You'd have to remind me, to be honest.
So there was a trailer that dropped, and it said Mandalorian and Grogu season 3 trailer. Pretty excited, was really hyped about it. And it was showing images of an adult Grogu smoking something from a bong or something.
Oh, I feel like
Was
it's
not
vaguely.
actually Mandalorian Grogu and whatnot. It was not Mandalorian anything. It was a spoof trailer that somebody made to like fake people and psych people out. But for whatever reason, every single media platform like that's like IGN, Just Jared, like all the places that would post film trailers and whatnot were just reposting this and saying, "Oh, yep, here it is," and nobody actually checked the trailer to see what it was.
Was this an April Fool's joke or was
No,
this.
this was after April Fools. That no,
See,
that's what I remember because
this
I
is
remember
the
it was
other thing.
after.
I get so And this is a beyond just like nerd media standpoint. This is just a general media, but specifically talking about like nerd media, just the amount of just BS, misinformation, clickbait. The clickbait is what gets me pissed off. Like you'll open up Instagram and you'll see like a Threads article because for whatever reason you open up Instagram and half of it's just like Threads articles nowadays
Yeah.
that has the worst, most clickbaity. There was one that was about God, what was it? That I saw literally this morning or yesterday about how some actor it was semi-nerd related. It was how Robert Irwin was boycotting Dancing with the Stars Pride Day or whatever. And Dancing with the Stars doesn't have a Pride Day. So Robert Irwin wasn't boycotting anything, and it was just a completely fake bullshit headline that's meant to stir people up for no reason. And I
Or
know that's
yeah.
not technically movie related, but that exact type of stuff happens with, oh, this actor said this, and just also just lying. Just
Well,
straight up lying.
and how about the examples that I see a lot of these, and sometimes it freaks me out, where people will just post, and I don't really find it funny anymore. Like again, when I was younger, I kind of found some of these funny because it was random or not. But how about when people will post like a really down, just really sad picture of this is an example because I saw this one this morning. Christopher Lloyd, who plays Doc Brown in Back to the Future, much
Mhm.
older actor nowadays. He is still very popular though.
Yeah, Back to the
They
Future Day was recently, so
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But they made a post and it was like him in a gray photo and it had like the date that it was. And if you didn't look at it closely, you never would have realized that it said happy birthday, Christopher Lloyd. You would have looked at that first thing and went, oh my gosh, Christopher Lloyd passed away.
I've
And that
seen stuff like that before.
and at first, again, when I was younger, I would find them kind of funny. I'd be like, "Oh, I got trolled. They trolled me. Good troll." Now I'm getting annoyed to the point to where I'm just like, "This isn't funny anymore." Like because like some of these actors I really do like and I really appreciate it. And yeah, I mean, I don't know personally, but I'm gonna be sad when they pass away because that means they can't make any more movies or whatnot.
Yeah.
Like it bothers me that people are willing to do that for a moment of fame or just a joke, and it
It's
really
not even
doesn't
a
matter.
moment of fame, it's just 5 clicks that get them nothing. That's the thing is most of the people that do bullshit like this get nothing out of it. There's nothing to be gained. Nothing substantial at least. I mean, what?
No.
You get 10,000 clicks on your article, make maybe $5 off of the ads that you make on your website. Like what are you getting out of this? Is there some sort of sick satisfaction? I never understand it. And if someone who does that is listening to this for whatever reason, fuck you. I try to not say fuck you to people anymore after the controversy that happened with Wafello. But no, genuinely from the bottom of my heart, if you clickbait your titles, if you are lying, if you're trying to spread misinformation about anything, let alone with this like not important media stuff, fuck you all the way to hell. There's
Yeah.
nothing to be gained out of it. And if you think that's fun or funny, reevaluate your goddamn priorities, brother or
Well, and
sister.
here's the thing. There is a harmless use of clickbait. There is harmless uses of it where it's kind of okay. For instance, a video that's going up today, or not
It already
today,
went
but
up by the time
it,
you
it
hear
it already went up by the time we're filming this. Our very own podcast video, episode 33,
it. 4.
34, 34, episode 34. I have my head, up against my palm, looking depressed and whatnot because we were talking about Chainsaw Man. I enjoyed that movie. I really like Chainsaw Man. It's at least within my top 10 this year. It's probably a little more than that. I really enjoyed Chainsaw Man. That's a harmless use of clickbait, but
I'll have it on the record that I was against using this photo.
you were well. I also could. To be fair, the reason I ended up taking that photo was because I couldn't remember. I couldn't think of what to do. I was like, "What post should I do?" I'll just clickbait and call it a
But
day.
I okay, I'll give you this. There's clickbait that is less harmful than others. That is true. Like I've fallen for clickbait before, and then yeah, sometimes it turns out that the video is half decent or whatever. But the stuff that's like, oh, making you believe that someone's dead or just straight up lying to you, like that stuff, there's no enjoyment to be gained out of it for anyone involved. If your goal is to get me upset, congratulations, you got me upset. But I don't get what you get out of that. If you wanna jerk yourself off in the corner alone with no friends because everyone hates you, good on you.
It just started raining outside. It's great.
Nice.
I think the city of Orlando just all in unison just said, "Yeah, we agree with you. This is really sad." But no, anyway,
It's
like,
bright and sunny outside if you can't tell from the half of my apartment that's just extra. That's why half of my face is always bright, is because in my apartment, literally my entire wall is a window for no reason, and I hate it, and I need to buy blackout curtains.
but kind of just putting this together, wrapping this bit together. It's not just Spider-Man. You know, it's every piece of media that exists nowadays.
Yeah.
Can we not just like slow down and realize that what we're doing may lead to false information or misinformation?
It does. It's not a may, it does.
Well, because some things out there are real. You know, some things out there are real set leaks.
But
That's
that
not
they sh
misinformation. It's information, but that's information you don't want to see. That's a different thing entirely. That's just things you don't
yeah.
want to see because whatever. Like how about the Deadpool and Wolverine leaks? Like we saw the Fox logo, the only thing they had released was a still of Jackman
The
in the suit and Reynolds in his suit, and they were like walking, but you didn't see anything. And then there
I'm
were
pretty
set
sure the Fox
leaks.
logo was an official post, or at least they eventually officially posted, I thought.
No, not prior to the movie. No, I remember exactly. It was a set leak, and it was them doing the action sequence. It was Deadpool going through the wall, ramming himself up against the Fox logo. It was that stunt or whatever. Because that immediately, like, here's the thing: we would have had no idea where they were from that initial that it wasn't a leak set photo; it was just a set photo that actually that Marvel themselves posted. We would have had no idea where they were. Just a vast landscape. That's all. When we saw the Fox logo, everybody put together that it was the Void. So we knew that some way, somehow, the Void was going to have to get involved. You know, we can assume based on Marvel logic, like the TVA is going to be involved and somehow, they're going to have to use time, whatever. I never would have thought the Void would have been involved in that movie. I never thought in a million years that's what the movie was going to be. But because we got that leak, I pretty much knew that, and I knew all the possibilities that could have come with that. And it just led to too many things that I was just like, that kind of spoiled the movie for me. It didn't ruin my experience. I still enjoyed it, but again, a nice surprise is what I would like, as opposed to just being spoon fed it. Here you go. Here's what you're gonna get.
And we've ranted about this a million times, and we're probably gonna rant about this a million more times, but
Oh,
it
sure.
really also is the trailers. Like,
Yeah,
now you're getting official information coming out that's ruining movies. Like, it used to be that all the information that was ruining movies was from assholes with a camera that snuck onto set that wasn't supposed to.
yeah, yeah.
Nowadays, which also, mind you, it's insane that that stuff is still allowed to happen. Because, like, let's think about it this way. And I'm not a lawyer. I'll never pretend to be a lawyer. But actors on sets sign like actors and crews on set sign NDAs to not be able or allowed to release any form of information about certain movies that they're involved in. That's
Sure,
just something that happens. Now, obviously, these leaks are not coming from those people, but why is it that when someone comes in and sneaks a photo, like that's just, it seems like nothing happens at all, ever. Like paparazzi are just allowed to get way too close to sets. Like they don't lock them down whatsoever. They just allow this to happen. And I guess it's the argument of like, oh, well, you can't just lock down all of New York City for a movie set. And I get that. But it's just such a like, I don't know. I don't want to say it's the movie's fault or the movie company's fault for that, but I don't know. Leaks will always piss me off. I don't think there will ever be a point in time which I don't get pissed off about leaks. It's just
sure,
like a kind
sure.
of like I don't get it type of thing.
I hear what you're saying. I do. Um, it's just annoying, and it's something we have to deal with. Um,
Yeah. No,
but
it's yeah.
whatever. Maybe people will listen to this and realize. Maybe they won't. Leaning towards they won't. But
Yeah, they're
uh,
already me telling them fuck you isn't going to do anything, but once more sincerely, fuck you.
Yeah. I am very intrigued to see how this episode goes because I really don't know what your thoughts are, what's happening. But what is happening is this. What's up, Nimrods? It's your boys. Welcome back to another episode of the Nerdy Nimrods podcast, episode 35, the first Halloween special that we will ever do on this channel. I'm your host this evening, Carson, aka Juggernaut, here with my forever wonderful co-host.
Brandon, aka Parrotfish.
And today we are talking about It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. And just to clarify, the movie is titled It. We're not talking about a film. So there's this podcast is going to be so weird
We're
because we're going
talking
to
also about the recent versions of it, not
yes.
the, I think it was what, 80s it?
No, with Tim Curry, no, we're not doing
Yeah,
that. But
yeah.
I do. This podcast is going to be
Wait,
so
we're not?
weird.
That's the one I watched.
Oh God. Uh, this podcast is gonna be really weird because we're gonna refer to the movie It and we're gonna call it It, but it's also like if we say it, it's just it's a mind fuck. It is such a mind fuck to say
I
that
think
word.
you're way more confused about this than I am.
I promise you at some point I'm gonna get lost and just like what we're talking about talking about it what do you mean it's gonna be like the
I mean,
who's on first routine. I'm gonna be
I
so
will say
confused.
I'll probably just say Pennywise anytime I refer to the it,
Yeah,
but
that probably would be smart. Brandon, I know it's only been a day. How we doing,
yeah.
buddy?
Yeah, breaking the fourth wall a little bit, as we established last episode, which came out technically as of recording this 2 hours ago or 2.5 hours ago. Um, I wish I could say not a lot has happened, but I watched 5.5 hours of movies, not including the stuff that we review weekly, and my headset broke. My very expensive, nice headset that I've had for a few years broke, and I'm very upset about it. So
Hooray.
hopefully we can. I'm still wearing it because technically it still works, but I'm gonna have to toss them because it's just fully snapped and I can't like wear them out anymore. So it's
Love
not been
that.
a. I don't know what happened, but I'm down about that. I am genuinely like kind of upset. But how are you, Carson?
Good, tired, preparing for a trip. Again, I'm dressed as Gru, so take that what you will. It's clear that I am just so lost that I'm not thinking through anything logical at all. And I'm just doing whatever at this point. But I'm excited for the trip. It's gonna be fun. Um, God, all right, let's. I'm gonna let you start because you let me start with Chainsaw Man. Um, Brandon, let's start with it. Chapter 1.
Yeah. So, big spoiler warning. I don't know if I really have to give one because these are old movies. I watched
They're
them for the first
older,
time, though. And I will say, I surprisingly went in somewhat unspoiled. There were certain things that caught me off guard with both movies. So, big spoiler warning. If you haven't seen the It movies, there will be timestamps.
sure.
So, skip around if you, well, I guess don't skip. Like, if you've seen It Chapter 2, but you haven't, if you haven't seen either It movie, don't watch this podcast. We
That's
are going
probably
to
for the
do
best.
our best to keep our thoughts segmented into the first half being It Chapter 1 and the second half being It Chapter 2. I don't trust Carson, though, so just be noted that he might accidentally spoil things from It Chapter 2. So just
That's
take
fair.
note. If you haven't seen either of the It movies, this is not the episode for you. I did not watch either of the It movies up until literally I watched the first one yesterday right after recording, and I finished the second one literally about an hour ago before recording this.
Okay.
And so, okay, time to get into my thoughts. So, I've established before I am a wuss, but specifically, I don't have many genuine fears in my life. There's a few. One of those is, in fact, clowns. I am actually afraid of clowns. Now, don't make fun of me. It is
I
just
will.
I don't like clowns. I also am established to not be a horror movie fan, or at least I haven't watched a ton of horror movies. So when Carson came up and suggested that we do It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 for our first ever Halloween special, I was not looking forward to this episode. I'm going to be honest, I kind of dreaded watching both of these movies because I don't like clowns and I'm not a huge horror fan. And I will say, when it comes to It Chapter 1, I was pleasantly surprised by how much I just genuinely enjoyed the movie. It is terrifying. I pooped my pants a few times. Like, I jumped out of my seat terrified. Now, is it the scariest movie in the world? Probably not, but I also don't have a big baseline of horror movies to base that opinion off of. But the storytelling that goes along with the jump scares and with the horror elements is really well done. Obviously, it's an ensemble cast of child actors, and all of the child actors did a really good job. Now, some of them are pretty notable actors nowadays, which isn't a surprise that they would have gotten their start in a really good I don't know if all of them like got their start per se with this movie, but
Sure.
they still did a really good job like portraying the characters. There were a lot of unsettling moments. There were a lot of moments that caught me off guard. I went in so unspoiled that I didn't even know that the whole movie was centered around finding Georgie. Like, that is how unspoiled in this movie I was. Is I knew that there was a clown and I knew that there was kids. So going along with this journey and finding out what was happening, that really leaned into the genuine terror that I felt. Like, the most terrifying moment for me personally, and we'll probably talk about this a little bit more when we get into our like back and forth thoughts, was the projector scene where Pennywise comes out of the wall of the projector. I actually had to pause the movie after that. It scared the living daylights out of me, and it was genuinely terrifying. So for this movie to do such a good job of building up a really good ensemble cast of characters, lifted up by some really good performances from all of the child actors, that leans into the terrifying nature. We talked about this with our Black Phone 1 and Black Phone 2 reviews. I do like when horror movies use comedy, because comedy does actually help not undercut the horror. It actually helps put you at ease so that when the horror elements come in, you feel more terrified. And there's specific characters in here that their entire point is to be that comedic relief, but watching them break and that comedy break also was genuinely terrifying. So that worked really, really well for me. And just again, I was kind of blown away by my enjoyment of the movie. Now, there are flaws. It is far from a perfect movie. I will get into some of that, but overall, I was surprised for someone who doesn't love horror and hates clowns that I genuinely had a fun, terrifying time with it chapter 1.
Yeah. Look, I saw this film back in theaters. I wasn't supposed to, but I did anyway. Uh, this was a film that I think I can remember back during my time was like just highly anticipated. People wanted to see this film. They knew it'd be terrifying, especially when you saw who was like behind the helm. Again, knowing Stephen King like was basically given permission. Yep, R-rated. Go do what you're gonna do. It was very different from the one they got from the 80s. The first one, the reason I think I always rewatch this first one, it's not because of the scares. It's not because set design, this, that. It really is just the fact that, and this is what I loved about Long Walk. I loved the cast of characters that are surrounding this film. The kids are, first off, well casted, but they're performed so well that it constantly draws you back in and wants you to it makes you want to rewatch this film over and over again. uh I think that they just make up the movie. They make the heart and soul of the movie. And unlike The Long Walk, where I thought, we have obviously in this film we have like our standard leads. We know exactly who they are. I think this film does a better job when they give stereotypes to certain characters. They're a bit more fleshed out here. Granted, there's a lot less people in this than there were in The Long Walk, so
There's less people and it's a longer movie.
and it's a longer movie. But nonetheless, I appreciate this movie for taking its time and giving us a cast of characters that we actually want to follow. Uh, Skarsgård as Pennywise is one of the most haunting performances, I think, to date from any person who's portraying a horror icon. Last year Skarsgård did Nosferatu, and that was just spine chilling, terrifying. In a thriller movie, and here this is like just straight up horror for him, and he does an incredible job here. The writing itself is pretty good. There's some lines where you're just like, okay, well, that's a little silly. That's a little stupid. Uh, but overall, it's written pretty well, and it does its job at least. It services the plot. Uh, the plot of the first movie is good. There's a few pacing issues for me. Uh, just in like in between the second and third act, where it's not like abundantly horrible, but it's prevalent enough for me that I feel like I need to say it at least. Um, and the kills are brutal. They are absolutely brutal. Uh, gory as hell. There's a lot more jump scares in this movie than there is something like Black Phone and Black Phone 2. This is a lot more of a straight up horror film versus those other films. And I'm not scared by it so much anymore. It's like when I said the other day, the other podcast about Halloween Horror Nights, how I'm desensitized to it. I watch enough horror movies to where I jump one every few movies, but that's one jump versus the entire film. Nonetheless, I really enjoy the first movie. There's a lot to love about it. It's by far from a perfect movie, but then again, I don't think it was ever going to be a perfect movie, considering it being one of the more popular horror books is not, in my opinion, the best Stephen King book to adapt ever. But for what they did it pretty good. And they did it enough to where it is still one of my favorite horror movies to watch around Halloween. I'll let you start. You'd mentioned that specifically you had like very little knowledge prior going into this. Did you not know about the Georgie death? Was that like something that you didn't know?
If I did, I must have forgotten about it, to be totally honest, because I straight up was like, when Georgie got his arm bit off and dragged into the sewers, like, I was caught off guard. Like, I didn't know that. I was surprised by how early this movie started. And now I
Mm,
guess, again, as a non-horror movie fan, I don't know how horror movies typically are paced, but for instance, the most recent horror movie that I watched, Black Phone and Black Phone 2, both Black Phones take a while to actually start the horror elements.
sure,
They
right.
have a good, especially the first one, 20 to 30 minutes of setup, of getting you kind of accustomed to the world and adjusted. This movie does that, but it starts with horror. It
Sure.
starts by putting you at ease with Georgie and with him dying and getting pulled into the sewers. And then it starts to establish your ensemble cast of characters. And then it goes back to the horror pretty quickly. And that's one thing I was kind of surprised about. We can start here. Just, you brought up pacing issues, and we can get into that. I'm impressed by how well paced the horror elements of this
Yes.
movie are, in terms of it's consistent. There are obviously down moments. There are your moments of comedy and levity, or moments that are just character focused, but there's a lot of horror, like, not just sprinkled throughout, but consistent throughout the entire movie. It's not just started off and then big crescendo at the end. There are things that will genuinely terrify you throughout this movie.
Sure. Yes. The projector on the wall is one of those bits where it's just you jump. Uh
That scared the ever loving shit out of me. Like, the projector scene in general was great, but then seeing, like, what I'm assuming, because, and we'll talk about the effects were impressive in this movie. A lot of it seemed really practical. The
Most of it's
movie
practical.
Yeah, the movie felt very practical, and that scene with Pennywise literally just felt like a animatronic coming out of the wall, like you would see at like a Universal or a Disney or something like that. And I
Sure.
think that's what terrified me, is it wasn't a CGI monster, it's something that felt real.
Yeah. Um talking about Georgie's death, I think the thing that surprises me about that the most is that that is the most iconic, I think, bit in any of the It. adaptations, it's probably the most iconic part of the book because I just remember going around school, making the jokes about, "Oh, hey there, Georgie, that's a nice boat. Do you want it back?" Like I remember everybody, especially around the time that this movie came out, just making comments about that. But I don't know, that's just like, I feel like the most iconic part of the book. So I'm just surprised you didn't get that spoiled. That was actually the one thing I was like, oh, when you said that you didn't get spoiled, I was like, oh, okay, that's very shocking to me.
I mean,
Uh,
I just genuinely like I'm decent enough at avoiding spoilers, but especially for genres that I'm just not as invested in,
Fair enough.
it's
Yeah,
significantly easier for me to just not look into it. Now, I will say, I say genres that I'm not interested in. I do like Stephen King's writing. Stephen King as a person is a different story, especially given recent events. I do want to make note of that. But Stephen King's writing and things like one of my favorite books of all time, Pet Cemetery. I've read a few other of his books that I'm blanking on right now
sure.
that are really, really well done. But in terms of his filmography and his, I guess, more popular books like an It, which is probably Stephen King's most popular work, if I'm not mistaken, at least his
It's
most
that
popular horror.
his most popular horror, probably it's that or The Shining. It's one of the two.
Oh, that I forgot that he did The Shining, honestly. So, yeah,
It's
that's
it's it's
fair.
it's one of the two. It's either that or it's The Shining, and I love The Shining. That might be my favorite horror product that's ever come out of his books. I really enjoy that product. Um, and that's also more of a thriller rather than just a straight up horror, unlike it. It really is like his probably like quintessential horror book that he
Yeah.
wrote. The others can be a lot more. I guess Pet Sematary you can have horror in it, but it is mostly a thriller in my mind. I don't see that as like a
Mm,
horror really.
I mean, I put it on I wouldn't say on par with an It. I would say, though, it's not far off in terms of horror, and maybe it's just because I read it younger. I read it pretty young, so maybe I was just genuinely more terrified. I haven't gone back to it in a little while,
Maybe
but
that was also one of the movies. The movie could be completely different too. I never saw the movie for Pet Cemetery. I actively was trying to be against that because I saw how bad it did and how bad it was going to be. And so I think just when I was younger, I just never went to go watch it, or it might have been 2019. I don't know when it actually came out. But anyway, the look, the cast of kids is just so well done. Do you have a standout?
I thought about that, and it is difficult. It really is because okay, I don't want to pick a standout right now because that is genuinely hard. There are ones though that I feel like didn't get as much.
Oh,
There were
sure.
definitely your core group. There
Yes.
was like absolutely like yes, it's a group of friends, but like I don't know because you have Eddie's pretty core to the group, but it's really Bill and Bill
The
and
the core is well, okay. Well, not saying like core like when they start, but like the core necessarily like for the entire movie throughout. It's Bev, Bill, Richie, Eddie, and Ben. And then Mike and Stanley are kind of just there. Stanley doesn't really
yeah.
get a lot to do in this movie.
No.
He
It,
gets some moments, and obviously he's more prevalent here than in the second one. But uh, and Mike doesn't get as much development. I feel like in this one, he
Mike
again he
Mike feels kind of like a plot device in
yeah
this movie. I
yeah
didn't he wasn't bad by any means. The actor still did a good job, but he just didn't feel as ingrained in the group as the rest of them.
sure
Like, you
yeah
have a great scene, which is a genuinely good scene of the rock fight
yeah
where we're introducing Mike to the group.
right
That was a good scene. But after that, like you had some setup with him and his grandfather. You had the moment of finding out about his parents burning in the house. he does get stuff in this movie, but I do feel like after he joins the group and you get that scene with the rocks, he takes a little bit more of a backseat compared to the rest of them, which, to be fair, when you have a big ensemble cast like this movie does, it is hard to give all of the characters as much focus.
I
You do have to
yeah.
let some slip, and Mike was unfortunately one of them. Now, I will say, after watching this, I genuinely want to read the book now, and I probably will. I don't know if I'm going to read it right away because I want to give it some time after watching this, but I do genuinely want to read the book more to see if they build upon any of some of the elements that I felt weaker, just because obviously when you're making a movie adaptation, you have to make sacrifices for pacing, for timing, for content. So
Yeah.
maybe Mike plays a bigger role in the book, and that's less of a complaint and more of an adaptation thing.
It could be. It could be. Again, I've actually never read the book. It's one of the only it's one of the only stories from Stephen King that I actually haven't read in book form. I've read Shining. I've read Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile. I've read quite a few of them. I haven't read that one. I wanted to actually read The Long Walk after the movie because I really wanted to see what the big differences were. Um, but you might be right. I think it's up to preference, and obviously, like we talked about with Chainsaw Man, and being from a based from a manga, or this being based from a book, not everything's going
Yeah.
to get adapted to the T. Some things are going to get changed. Some things are going to morph into something else. So I think that again for the movie we got, they did a pretty good job of adapting. I feel like.
Oh,
Just
yeah.
from what I heard, there's one scene, and you're gonna read the book, and you're gonna go, "What the hell is this?" There's
Is
one
it the child
infamous scene.
orgy?
How did you know?
Okay, that I did know. It's the honestly, you want to talk about like the Georgie death being the most talked about thing, and it probably was at the time of release of the movie. The biggest talked about thing from what I've heard is that there is a child orgy in the book. I don't know when it happens. I'm assuming it happens in the woods when they make the blood pact. I don't know if you
No,
know exactly when it happens. It
no,
doesn't.
it's in the cave before they leave. I only know this because I did back in like 2020 after like the second it came out. I was like, "Hey, tell me what the differences are between the books and the movie," and they talked about it. Apparently, it's in the cave right before they leave after defeating it, and they can't leave the cave for whatever reason, and it causes that like they have to do that. I don't fully understand. I don't know.
Okay, so maybe I'm gonna look up those chapters and skip them because that's
Yeah,
weird.
I don't fully remember the reason. It's not a justified reason. It's Stephen King probably
It's
got
Stephen King
high.
peak on acid. Yeah.
He was probably high when he wrote it. So that's probably how we got the way we did. Um anyway, yeah, back to what I was saying. Uh Standouts in the cast, at least for this film. We talked yesterday about Chainsaw Man. I was like, yeah, I think I like this standout here, and then the movie I like this standout here. I'm gonna have two different standouts probably for uh chapter 2 and 1. I
Yeah, that's fair.
honestly, I Beverly is such a well-written character in the
She
first
is.
movie.
And if I did have to pick a favorite, it was genuinely between Beverly and Ben, I feel like.
I like Ben. I like
They're
Ben.
both very they have the most depth to them. They really do because you boil it down and yes, there's an ensemble cast, but ultimately there's a throuple in this movie and it's Ben, Beverly and Bill. The 3
Yeah,
Bs. That's the
yeah,
throuple. It's the love triangle in this movie and they definitely get the most focus, so maybe that's just why they feel like the best characters. But
yeah,
like Ben specifically, maybe it's because like I don't know, he had such a just genuine softness to him that felt like someone who would be broken by what's going on more than anyone, but he actually ends up being one of the stronger characters. and I just really like that. If that makes sense in terms of like,
No, I get it. I
yeah,
get it. Um, no, those three characters are all written really well. So it's funny because like they're all written very well, but I also feel like it becomes more prevalent in chapter 2. But even in chapter 1, each character is kind of on their own quest, even from start to finish, even though they're
hmm
all together. Like, and like Bill being there purely for Georgie, Richie and Eddie being there for Bill, uh, Ben being there for Beverly. Beverly is just investigating what's going on, trying to make new friends
I
at the
mean,
school that she
Beverly's
hasn't
also
had.
there for Bill because so obviously you have the scene where they all like break off for that. I think it was about a month period of time,
It's a
and
yeah, somewhere
it's
around there.
about a month. Beverly is the only one who stays with Bill. Like even
Yeah,
Ben leaves. Like everyone's out of there, and it goes back to Beverly and Bill.
yeah.
Now, I'm gonna ask you this question twice.
Okay,
I'm gonna ask you it once now, and I'm gonna ask you it once when we review it chapter 2, because I want to
okay,
see if your opinion changes. And I want you to clear your mind of it chapter 2 and only answer this question from the eyes of it chapter 1.
okay.
Do it to the best of your ability. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Would you have rather Beverly end up with Ben or with Bill
In chapter 1,
in just it chapter 1?
Ben.
Okay.
I think they set that up much more clearly. Even from the get-go, like their relationship is shown to be stronger. Beverly's and Bill's in the first movie comes off as a really strong friendship that gets muffled because of the postcard that Ben sends, and she thinks it's from Bill.
Yeah.
But even from the beginning, the way Ben acts towards Beverly, the way Beverly acts towards uh Ben's Beverly acts towards Ben, uh singular, not plural. It's all shown in a way where it's like, okay, she interacts with him differently from how she interacts with Bill. She does interact differently from Bill with everybody else. Like she doesn't act with Richie the same way. She doesn't act with Eddie the same way. But it's deliberately shown, obviously, because they want to push both of the guys and Beverly in the middle. And it's like Sophie's choice. Who are you going to choose? I think Ben is the obvious choice, though, because
Interesting.
in my mind, I think Ben is the obvious choice. Uh,
Because at the end of the first movie, it's Beverly and Bill that technically end up together, but obviously they don't. And that's why I told you to clear
they're
your mind of it. But
yeah, they're not
they
really
are the
together,
ones
but
that
they
have the
are.
crescendo kissing scene. They're the
I,
ones that have that
yeah,
moment together at the end of the movie. And I personally feel like I know you said they set up Ben and Beverly, and they did. They set them up very well.
well,
And I
they set
do
up Bill and
feel
Beverly too. I'm not discrediting that they do, but
no,
it's
I
not
know.
as much as Ben.
I do feel bad for Ben. I I want Ben and Beverly to end up together. More of a like, go get him, Ben. Like you can do this. Believe in yourself. But I feel like they set up Beverly's connection to Bill and her willingness to stand by him when everyone else leaves him way better. And I really liked
Yeah,
that. So when they had their kissing scene at the end of the movie, while I did feel bad for Ben, I still felt happy for Bill and Beverly.
yeah. No, that's fair. I get that. Um, I don't know. It's just the way I remember watching the movie the first time. I was just like, that makes the most sense. And I actually I felt bad for Ben, but it was for a different reason. It was, oh, she's actively choosing Bill over Ben. Because here's the fun thing. Again, I'm not getting into the second movie. I'm trying to stay in the first movie. But after Ben revives Beverly, he just kind of like brings her back to consciousness and whatnot.
Yeah.
You know, they share the moment where they share the postcard, what's written on it. That should have been the inclination to begin with. Oh, it was Ben. It was never Bill. Bill's never actually liked me in that way. And then she still chooses Bill at the very end. I'm
Mhm.
sure there's some deeper meaning. There might be like a more thoughtful way of looking at it that I'm just not seeing. Or she just deliberately chose Bill over Ben, which I don't really like. It's like the Twilight thing. Who's she gonna choose, Edward or Jacob? You know?
Don't bring that in here. Don't bring
uh, I would never. Those are horrible movies. I don't know. That's a tricky question. I'll be able to answer that a lot easier in chapter 2 for sure, though.
Fair enough.
Um,
I think that okay, I moving off of that, unless you have anything else you want to add.
no, go please go ahead.
Talking about the general setup and the horror elements of kids going missing, scary clowns, some sort of paranormalness to it, but more of a there is still an undertone of realness because it's a core of fear and just Pennywise is a clown, but he's also a clown because clowns are scary to people. And in reality, he shows up to all the kids through their fears, whether it's through the painting or whether it's through disease. And that's why, like, you have vomit. Like those moments and the way that it kind of like grounds it in their fear, I really liked. And I really, how do you feel about the general like I guess you have your fantastical elements, obviously, when he opens his mouth and he's like consuming the kids. And then obviously you have like Beverly lifting up. But most of the movie, I don't want to say felt grounded because you do have like zombies and things, but it felt low level in a way that is made me terrified.
Yeah. Um, the way they set everything up is just such a it's such a ballsy way to go about it, in all honesty.
Well,
I again,
there's no big exposition dump with this movie, which I
no,
really appreciate.
again, in chapter 2, we'll talk about it later. Uh, there is no exposition dump in the first movie. It's like again, this is actually why I will say this. I know we're not talking about the second movie. I am gonna able to say this, and I'll explain later. I do prefer the first movie to the second one. I have always said that. And I like it because I do think chapter 1 is a much more straightforward journey, and it's taking you along for the ride, and you're following the characters and seeing their start to finish place, seeing them overcome the obstacle that is Pennywise. And the setup for it is a dark, grim start, because especially the way they set up Pennywise makes it seem like the kids have no chance against him,
Yeah.
using all their worst fears against against Pennywise, or
Well, and
using all their
ultimately,
worst fears against the kids.
they don't defeat Pennywise. Like,
No,
this
they
is
just delay him.
they
Sure.
delay the inevitable, essentially. They push him back for another 27 years, and there is that it's funny because and we'll talk about this when they come back, they poke fun in the second movie about, like, not ending off a movie happy, but, like, yeah, the first movie doesn't end off with a happy, comforting ending in a way. Like, yes, the
No.
kids pushed back Pennywise, but there is still the pact that they make and the unsettling nature, which also leans into like the genuine terror that I felt at moments of not knowing what's going to happen. However, one thing I will
Sure.
say, and I'll try to not use this as a reference to the second movie. I know we've done that, but I'll try to not do it. This is genuinely just a thought I had in this movie is there's not as much or there's not a ton of consequence in this movie for characters that we care about. The horror elements are there and you lose people like Georgie. And I said this when I talked about it chapter 1 or not it chapter 1, sorry. When I talked about Black Phone and Black Phone 2 is there isn't as much like bad things that happen, which for me does sometimes undercut horror. And it's I'm not saying, and this is just a slasher a trope, and I'm not saying that every movie needs to do that, that every movie needs to just kill a main character or kill all these people and we kill like the bullies, for instance. And that's what I want to talk about next after this is the bullies. But we don't really have as much consequence. So when they're getting chased and things are happening, it kind of undercuts the horror because there doesn't feel like there's a consequence to the horror.
Sure, right.
And I don't know if you have
Um,
any thoughts on that, but
no, I
like
just agree the
watching
same
the
way.
bullies die and the bad guys die, cool, but I'm not as scared of that. I'm more like, oh yeah, cool. They got their comeuppance, not like a oh shit, is this gonna happen to the good guys? Because bad things happen to the good guys, but it's Georgie dies, and then we get some bad like Bill or Ben gets cut up, and we have like some damage that gets done. Who was it that snapped his arm? It was Eddie, right? Eddie snapped, or not Eddie. Who was it that snapped his
Eddie snaps
arm?
his arm.
It
Eddie
was
snaps his
Eddie.
arm.
That's what I thought. Okay,
It's
Eddie
Eddie.
snapped his arm. Like those moments were the most consequence that we got, and it was. I guess the reason why I say that is because the horror at the end of the movie, it didn't lose me, but that's when it gets into that more big bombastic, they're getting chased and things are just happening, and it feels less horror and more, I don't want to say thriller, but just more bombastic, like I'm going through a haunted house, as opposed to like genuinely like unsettling, like things are starting to happen and pieces are unknown and pieces aren't being put together type moments.
Right. No, I agree with you. The Bowers in this movie really throughout the first two, but I'll stick with this one specifically. Bowers is very much like a character on the outside. He's just a physical obstacle that is put in the way so that the kids have something else to overcome other than just Pennywise, you know. He's not he's not really that vital. I mean, he's vital here a bit more, and I like what they do with him where it's like he's slowly going insane. uh he's a bully, he probably breaks the rules. They don't fully set it up. It's implied that his dad may not be the best dad, may even be a corrupt cop who like hurts his kids, whatnot.
Yeah.
And so he lashed out against his dad. Pennywise, basically convinces like, hey, make it a good day, kill him, take the knife and kill him. And he does it, and it's uh from that moment on, it's Bowers' like downward spiral as he becomes more and more mentally deranged, which in the first movie is shown very, very well. It's a very very, very prevalent theme, and I like that.
Yeah,
And so
talking about
when Bowers dies,
when he gets shoved
quotations,
down the well.
when he gets shoved down the well, it's not as satisfying because it's not like the other kids. He's not really somebody we emotionally got latched onto because they didn't really give us anything for him. They implied it, but they didn't give us anything to really latch onto him beyond him being a horrible bully. Uh,
Yeah, Bowers is one of those characters that I would assume slash hope is just more fleshed out in the book, and we just didn't give him as much time in the movie. Because if it's the same way in the book, like my opinions on Bowers is he's interesting, and a lot of his story is very implied. It's more of a, I don't want to say show don't tell, but they don't really do either. It's kind of just like you have the one scene where he almost shoots the cat and his dad comes in there and stops him, and you're like, okay, well his dad doesn't seem that abusive, but he stops him by shooting the gun at his feet, and you're like, okay, it's a little bit of an extreme example there, buddy. I don't know if you really needed to do that, but it didn't really, he just felt like a kind of stereotypical like psychopath that is easily manipulated into doing Pennywise's bidding. But at the end of the day,
sure.
he serves, like he kills his dad, which is, it did catch me off guard. Like when he actually killed his dad, that was, I guess, another one of those consequence moments, but it's not a consequence moment that really felt as gratifying because you didn't care as much. But the only other moment that he really had that mattered, that wasn't just a general, like, generic school bully, was the moment when they go into the house. But he is also pretty easily defeated. He shoved down a well, and he didn't
Right.
really need to be there. Like, that's my
Yeah.
thing with Bowers, is he's an interesting character if we would have gotten more, but
Yeah.
ultimately he didn't need to be there. And if you removed Bowers, other than for setting up Ben, I guess, but
Yeah.
really you could have just done that with any generic school bully and it would have served the same purpose. And then you can move on and have Pennywise be the main fear factor.
Sure. Uh, one of the last things I want to talk about for chapter 1, at least, is I had mentioned that I picked this one specifically because it was a pretty healthy mix of, horror, but there's a lot of comedy in this movie. Did you see the comedy? Did you laugh at the comedy?
Oh, yeah.
I
I mean,
figured that
it's very
this would
in
have been
your
more.
face.
I figured this would have been more up your alley than most. So I'm glad you enjoyed that. One of my favorite jokes is when they're all jumping over the cliff and you just hear Richie when Beverly goes over, "What the fuck?" And it's just like so in your face, but it's really funny. And I don't know. I appreciate the comedy that these movies have, because again, it also really brings the kids together, brings the cast together, the characters, all of it.
I mean, it makes them feel like more genuine kids, I guess. It makes them feel more relatable when they're just cracking stupid jokes like we all did when we were kids with our friends. It is
Sure.
obviously excessively crude, but I'm not really gonna judge that for that. I know middle school kids and how they can be. It's not like it's not believable. So it was like it was in your face sometimes that felt what I appreciate about the comedy in it, especially it chapter 1, is it is excessively in your face at moments. However, it is excessively in your face in world. It's not one of those excessively in your face where it feels like it pulls you out of the moment. It's excessively in your face to where even the characters in the movie acknowledge, hey, you're being too much right now, or hey, let's not joke about this. It's not helping the situation. And it's
Yeah.
not a breaking the fourth wall, it's just a genuine reaction from both parties involved whenever it happens.
Sure.
In
Right.
terms of, like, obviously, it is, Richie is the most prevalent of this crude comedy and making excessive jokes. So when Richie gets called out on it, it feels like he's just having a genuine response and trying to undercut his nerves with humor. And the characters in the world and the rest of the cast are upset about that in a genuine way. How I would also, as a moviegoer, be like, okay, did we really need a 13th joke about fucking his mom, or this, that, or the other?
Right. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Um, but even still, like, it's still, for me at least, it really is like a comedy, I think, just because it is the kids and it's really fun to watch them like be kids. I didn't really get bothered by the reoccurring joke like that. Like, most times I can get bothered by reoccurring jokes that just go on for way too long. I didn't really feel that with this movie.
Well, in what I mean by bothered is I got bothered in the same way that the kids in the world got bothered. It wasn't like
Oh,
a,
okay. Yeah.
"Oh,
Yeah.
this is bad writing." It was a, like, "Okay, that was a little excessive right now." But then when it gets called out, it reminds me that, hey, this isn't a, because comedy in that nature can be for 2 reasons, mainly.
Yeah.
1, bad writing, and it's just the writers just tried to do something that clearly didn't work. Or 2, it's to make you relate to the character and connect to their genuine reaction to that moment. That's
Sure.
what this felt like, and that's why when it gets called out in the movie, it whenever I would be like, okay, do we really need another your mom joke? And another character would say that for me, it would pull me back in and be like, oh no, that's exactly how you're supposed to feel. This isn't a, oh no, I'm annoyed because this is bad writing. It's a, oh no, I'm annoyed because everyone else is also annoyed, but this is also his genuine reaction to what's happening in the moment.
Sure. Yeah. Um, yeah, I completely I get that. Let's pause chapter 1 and let's change guards. Let's shift it. Let's move to it chapter 2 and kind of combine our thoughts. Go ahead and give me your thoughts after watching it chapter 2, Brandon.
So It Chapter 2 is a decent movie. I think from a movie perspective, it's well acted, it's well put together. There is some genuine scare moments. However, I feel like you lose a lot of what makes It Chapter 1 so special in the second movie. One thing I brought up with It Chapter 1 is a lot of it's very practical, which makes it feel more terrifying. I feel like It Chapter 2 kind of loses that. I feel like there's a lot more overuse of CGI, and sometimes it doesn't look as good, which takes me out of the moment a lot more and feels unnecessary. Also, another reason why I would feel genuinely more terrified in It Chapter 1 is because I'm watching this happen to kids who are ultimately defenseless and naive to what's going on around them, but just want to genuinely do what's good. When you put it in the sense of now you're watching the grown up versions of them, I feel like it undercuts some of that horror because they're way more capable of getting through this and defending themselves. Now, there are still things with the character beats and making you realize that maybe they're not as grown up as you think they are.
Sure.
Some of it for plot related reasons, some of them just genuine reasons. Because, like, for instance, how they all start to revert back to themselves as they start to remember things. And it reminds you that, hey, they never really got over this trauma. They just kind of forgot because of the magic of Pennywise. And that's the other thing that kind of loses me in this second movie is it loses a lot of its grounded nature by going extraterrestrial, big, bombastic, CGI set piece ending. That some of it really, really worked for me, and certain moments really worked for me
Yeah.
in terms of the characters and the story beats they were telling with the characters. But in terms of moving away from that one on one personal horror that I felt with the first one and moving into a bigger set piece, more of a action movie, less of a horror movie ending,
Yeah.
you do really lose me a lot. This
Yeah.
movie is also almost an hour longer. I think it's about 45 minutes longer. And I do think it overstays its welcome a little bit. I do appreciate that we do flesh out each individual character a little bit more. However, I do think that there could have been a little bit of slicey dicey, specifically with some of those like bad pacing problems where you slow down way, way more. And take Bowers out of this movie. He was okay in the first movie and he served a purpose. He should have died in that well. There was no reason whatsoever. He served 100% flat out zero purpose in this movie. And when he came back, I genuinely was actually annoyed, and that felt like bad writing. So
Yeah.
moments like that are why I can't put It Chapter 2 as high up as It Chapter 1. But it is still very well acted. It is a well put together movie. And I appreciate how they try to actually give every individual much more of a character moment as opposed to the first movie, where it felt like we kind of forgot about certain characters and didn't give them the time that they deserve. So
Sure.
I can appreciate those things that they did. However, when you kind of divulge everything into this, not just like magic, because obviously there's something more going on, but this alien threat with with tribes and floating balls in the sky and just all of these bigger than life, it removes some of that horror from the movie for me. And that's
Sure.
just like something that I wish and this isn't a movie thing. This is obviously like a Stephen King book thing, and I'd be curious to see how he handles it in the book as opposed to how he handled it here, but I just think that there was a lot of this movie felt unnecessary. Obviously, we needed to wrap up Pennywise, and that's not what I'm saying. I know we were going to get a second movie, and I wanted a second movie after finishing the first one to continue to flesh things out and wrap up their stories. But just some of the elements in terms of going with the tribal stuff, bringing Bowers back, and it was so unnecessary, and I just couldn't get behind it because when you add 45 minutes to a movie that was already 2 hours and 15 minutes for the first one, you need to justify taking up that 45 minutes, and I did not feel like this movie justified taking 45 minutes longer than the last one, because the last one again was genuinely terrifying, and I feel like they tried to pace out the horror in this movie the same way that they paced it out in the first one. But again, when you're doing it to adults and you're doing it with bad CGI and it felt more campy, those I did not feel nearly as scared throughout most of this movie as I did in the first one. So it was a good movie. I just can't say it was a great movie, honestly. I don't know. I don't know if that's a controversial opinion, but that's just my general thoughts.
I hear what you're saying. I look, my general thoughts for this are not far off. Again, I already mentioned I preferred the first movie to the second movie. I don't hate the second movie. There's nothing that's abhorrently bad about this movie, but this movie is a bloated film. Very much bloated. You could cut off at least 30 minutes of this film and make it feel fine. I am one of the people that I do not hate the final sequence of this movie. It's still a better final sequence than most movies. It's just not what I expected for an It finale, where it went with a bunch more callbacks and emotional beats versus sticking to a horror beat, which is a little different. And I guess you could make the logical argument that the first movie kind of ended the same way too, with a big action set piece. But the difference is I felt that there was a bit more tension in that first film. And again, when they're kids, it's really hard to overcome it. But the difference between the second movie and the first one is that the first movie ends in like 15 minutes to 20 minutes. That's the final sequence. The finale is like 35 minutes long for It Chapter 2. So it stays as well. I know I'm really off on the times. It's less for both, I'm pretty sure. It just that's what it feels like, at least. And again, I don't hate anything that they're throwing at me. Like, there's some really great, like, the callbacks are great and the emotional moments are great. I love the shot of Beverly helping Ben out of the dirt and them realizing, like, we've been looking for the wrong people our whole lives. This is where we need to be, was with each other. I love Bill finally accepting that what happened to Georgie wasn't his fault. I do like Richie and Eddie in this film. Like, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just a drawn out sequence. Bowers doesn't need to be in this movie. He really is just another obstacle to overcome and a physical threat. And I guess he had some comedy at times, but there's nothing really here that, like, no pun intended when I'm talking about Bowers, drives the knife further, drives the plot along much better. It just happens. Things surrounding his character just happen for the sake of happening because, oh, we need to add some violence or horror or action into this. And even the scenes with Bauer, it didn't really feel like there was any horror, really. It just was there. I still like the emotional beats. Again, one of my favorite scenes, if not maybe my favorite scene, is that dinner scene when they're all adults and they're all at the table and they're all laughing and they're sharing stories. Richie's ripping on Eddie and, all of that. Ben, Beverly, Bill are all just talking with each other. It's such a heartwarming scene to see them as adults come together and talk and whatnot, especially like the calm before the storm, really. It's a well done scene. I said the writing in It Chapter 1 feels very silly at times. The writing in It Chapter 2 also feels very silly at times, to a detrimental point. And honestly, I think the biggest thing that I have for this movie, and the actors don't do a bad job, but of all the characters who I feel like the same character from the first movie versus who they are now, and I get people change as they become adults, Richie is the only one to me that I feel like is actually, and Eddie, I think to a certain point, are the only characters that feel the same just throughout the entire course of both films. Like, yeah, they're a bit more grown up, they might be a bit more mature, but they feel at least like the same. Like, you could easily see that they're the older versions of the kids that we saw in the previous movie. Ben's actor he does a good job. I just don't feel like he just portrays Ben in a very okay way. It's not like my favorite thing. It's not the worst thing. He just doesn't seem like Ben to me. The one character who does get an upgrade is Mike. Mike is better in the second movie than he is in the first. I don't think that's really a fair comparison, though, because he gets a lot more development in the second movie than he did in the first. Again, the kills are brutal when they happen. There's some suspenseful moments with Pennywise, and he's good here, but ultimately, Pennywise is a lot better in the first movie. it's just everything that the first movie did better. The second movie isn't bad, but the first movie did it better. And then there's just all the moments that they hit in the first movie are done better in the first movie. It's not a common case of sequelitis because this was a sequel that did kind of need to happen to wrap up the story, but it definitely, you can definitely feel that the first chapter of the book is a little better than the second chapter of the book. It actually is a part of the reason why I'm a little worried for the Wicked movie coming out later this year. Not saying it's going to be bad, but I don't think it's going to be nearly as good as part one, because act one of Wicked is significantly better than act two, and act two is kind of like a really lull, not bad, but it's a lot more somber. And so I really want to know what they end up doing with it. But those are kind of my thoughts about it chapter two, just in a nutshell.
So I want to start with, okay, do you want to get the negatives out of the way, or do you want to get the positive? Start with positive.
I say start with negative because start with
Because
negative.
there are two ways that I can start. Okay. I don't want to bring this up too much more, but now that I can actually like flesh out my thoughts and more than just like my general, like try to keep it to a few minutes. Not only did Bowers feel unnecessary, I genuinely was upset by his
As his
presence in this
inclusion,
movie.
yeah,
Like Bowers in the first movie was fine. He served a purpose, and I kind of enjoyed him enough as it was. He was nothing special, but him being a psychopath and going too far with bullying to the point in which is near murder, I do hope when I eventually read the book that we give a little bit more as to his reasoning and in his I guess, motivation behind that, but it didn't
sure.
feel as bad. It felt like, okay, I can put two and two together. The second movie, he's fully lost it. He's just full psychopath, which is fine. And I think that makes sense because he already had clearly lost a few screws or marbles or whatever in the first movie. So him being in an insane asylum, we saw him being arrested for his dad's murder, which also I hated that scene because I did not know what was happening. They did a terrible job of setting up some of the flashbacks and making you realize that they were flashbacks. Like
Sure.
when he gets flushed out of the pipes, I did not know that was a flashback at first, and it took me like basically up until him getting arrested for his dad's murder for me
That
to
it was.
realize that it wasn't a flashback. And I feel like that
Yeah.
was the movie's fault and not like, oh, you're not supposed to know. No, it just felt kind of like bad
No,
pacing
that is. Yeah,
or
it's
bad
bad.
presentation. So with
Bad execution.
yeah, bad execution. With Bowers being in this movie, he got nothing, and he was just kind of like a generic slasher psychopath that had three scenes that felt like they did nothing. They didn't further any of our characters because the characters I feel like would have acted the exact same with or without Bowers.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying Bowers needed to have died, but the fact that you're going to make me believe that this kid fell all the way down this well, lived, and then walked back home, got her, like, I would have just been happy enough if you would have killed him, and I would have just never thought about him again or really worried about it. So him
Yeah.
coming back, I was like, okay, maybe they'll do something interesting enough. And then they didn't. So I just couldn't help but be like, why are we here? Why are we doing this?
There's a fix that I thought about this, and it's the fact that don't make Bowers an adult. Let him come back in the moment that the kids come back, but let him be more of like a mindless zombie, similar to Hockstetter. If you're gonna make him just an aimless, brainless, dull character, then let him be that. Let him just be a husk of a body that he used to be. Let him be scarred from falling down the well. Like make him just part of Pennywise's like mindless army of like goons that he's collected over the years. Again, Hockstetter is right there, a proven example that you can just make it happen and it works. I'm almost surprised that, especially because the big final action sequence did turn into a big final action sequence. I'm surprised they didn't just go that route and
Yeah.
make it like, okay, it's the kids against Pennywise and this army. Uh, they have to figure out how to stop both at the same time, even though both are connected to Pennywise. That's not a bad idea, actually. If you're going to go that route, do it. That's my fix for Bowers. Again, I don't hate everything in this movie. I kind of hate the way they use Bowers. Again, the one funny moment I really like is the scene with him and Eddie when they're in the room and he just stabs me. He starts laughing. He says it's your time. I'm like, who says it's my time? I'm like, nope, that's really funny situational comedy. I like that.
Yeah.
But beyond it, it did nothing because he walks
Yeah.
out of the hotel room after getting stabbed, mind you, just pulls it out and he just walks back to his car
And
like nothing happened.
that's why he would have worked better as a zombie, probably,
Yes.
because you get stabbed in the heart. I don't care how psychopathic you are, you're not walking away from that.
You
And
were
then I
stabbed
guess
in the
the argument is
chest.
it probably didn't go that deep because the shower curtain was there. Like,
You can
I don't
still
know.
you
It
can
just
still get stabbed and not like be able to move. Like I
it
really
it it felt like so plot convenient and unnecessary that like I don't know, but I don't want to talk about Bowers anymore, to be honest. I
well, I
just
would say the one good use of Bowers in this movie is in the flashback sequences, like when he's actually like, except the first one when when he gets arrested, like when he basically gets really upset at Richie for being in the room playing with his cousin, and his cousin doesn't want to see like that
oh, at the
he's hanging out
arcade, yeah.
at the
Yeah.
arcade, and he doesn't want to like, so they just make up a lie, and Bowers like accosts him for everything and whatnot and accuses him of being a certain way, and so it's just like
Done
it's
that without
hard.
bringing him back. So, like, I don't
Yeah.
disagree, but you didn't need to bring him back to do that.
Well, and what's
Is
funny is later on when they're adults in that scene, which is also one of my favorite sequences with Richie, is when Pennywise is sitting atop the guy. Did you miss me, Richie? I missed you. And he sings
yeah,
the whole song. I know your secret, and it's a really fun sequence. So why not have Pennywise be more involved in the flashback sequence to build that off, or have Bowers come back just for that moment?
mhm,
I don't know. I'm riffing too much on that moment, but like that was like one of the only good uses I thought that Bowers had.
yeah.
Um,
Talking about another negative, and I guess this isn't as much of a negative, this is more of, like, I guess, a genuine question. In the scene where Richie is in the courtyard area or the park or whatever, and we get his flashback where he's being chased by the giant statue, Pennywise mentions, I know your secret. Did we ever get a payoff for what that's? Did I miss what that? I felt like that was a
it's
big
subtle.
buildup.
No, it's subtle. It's just so I don't know if the book gets defined anymore. I think they're trying to they full on say that Richie's gay in the flashback sequence because that's the whole point is like the kid gets upset and like I don't know. I am always a little confused on it because like I think they're trying to just suggest that like okay, Richie has always been gay. That's part of the reason why he lashes out at a lot of people because nobody else accepts him for that. And so he feels insecure about it. And so he lashes out at people. He makes jokes and quips. And again, that's also part of the reason why at the end of the movie, even though it is more of a friendship thing, I think that's why they do like the heart R and E, Richie and Eddie,
I
Uh,
think that makes sense. I feel like I love subtle storytelling. Subtle storytelling is one of my favorite like ways of storytelling.
sure.
Maybe I'm a little dense. That felt a little too subtle.
It did.
It,
No, it
it,
definitely did.
it
You're not wrong on
genuinely
that.
felt like I could, now that you say it, I can put the pieces together and be like, okay, I can see what they were putting together. I do feel like, though, for how big the moment of Pennywise being like, I know your secret was, I didn't feel like, and I'm not saying we needed it to be like spelled in plain letters in the sky type of thing clear, but just a little bit more. Just a little bit more.
Again, either that's the because again, I don't fully know, and I don't know if that's fully what they were setting up. That could be it. It could also be it could simply be just Pennywise, saying it for the sake of saying it. I don't think that's what it is. I think Richie is like hiding that he's gay, and we never fully get a payoff from it beyond the bridge scene at the end when he carves the heart in. But that's it. Richie's like one of the most Richie. I love Richie in this movie because he's such a well thought through character because he takes a completely different tone than what he had in the first movie, which was he was just a comedic relief character. who lashed out at people. They give him something here that I really enjoy. But it's always so confusing because sometimes I look at the things that they gave him and I'm like, you could have been a little more on the nose with that one. You didn't have to go super subtle so that it's like almost impossible to tell what it is. Um, you know, uh, I guess that whole scene, I just like that scene. I think it's really well done.
I mean, the scene otherwise with him getting chased and the terror elements of it definitely worked with Pennywise and with
you're just a little confused about it with there not really being a bigger payoff at the end.
again, I understand the subtle storytelling. I feel like the movie did it a little more subtle than what I could pick up on, but maybe I'm just dense.
I think one of the things I also didn't like about this movie was the fact that Bill and Beverly like have another moment. I get that they forgot about their lives from Derry, and so I get that they might forget certain things. I don't fully understand why they had to go the route of, oh, Beverly's in love with Bill again because he's a good man, especially because Bill is a married man. You would think at some point in that scene, Bill would just completely pull away and be like, I'm married. Like, we can't do this. Like, that would
Yeah.
justify that scene at least and make me feel a little happier about myself. No, they don't do that. He just full on accepts and they actually kiss. I'm like, what? Like, why are we doing this? Like, I get why she was doing it. Why is he doing it? It's just a choice. I'm just like, I don't
Yeah.
like it. It's
Yeah.
only
Like
it's only to set up the reveal at the end, really.
and because I get it because of the whole they pseudo revert back to the way that they like I think one of my favorite and this is like subtle story this is the example of subtle storytelling that is more in your face but still subtle to a degree because it's never called out.
Yeah.
Bill doesn't stutter until he starts to remember. And
Yeah.
as he starts to remember, he stutters more and more. So you can see them kind of converting back and remembering and becoming more and more like childish.
Yeah, and I guess that's the argument you could use is that they're
But what I'm
reverting back to being
saying,
kids.
my argument is I understand that. I still agree with you though, in the terms of it felt it felt like they were just trying to continue the love triangle so that they could wrap it up, but the way that they continued the love triangle didn't feel as satisfactory because of the way that they tried to shoehorn Bill back in.
I agree.
Because in the second movie, to answer the question again that I asked you at the first movie on who I want them to end up with, in the first movie, I felt like Bill and Beverly had a deeper connection. I much preferred Ben and Beverly's connection in the second movie by a country mile. Now,
Yeah.
obviously, they were always endgame, and you could tell that from the first movie. And I even admit that I felt like I felt bad that I wanted Bill and Beverly to end up together over Ben and Beverly. But in the second movie, and it's not just because Bill is married, but it is a part of it, but mainly just because like I do genuinely feel like there is a lot more of a connection between Ben and Beverly in the second movie.
Sure. Yeah. Um yeah, I don't know. There was always something off with that I never fully resonated with. And again, I have to preface this every time I say this. I don't hate any of the choices they really make in this movie. Beyond the Bowers inclusion, and I don't hate what they did with Bill and Beverly. I just wish it was justified more.
Yeah.
Especially when your movie is almost 3 hours long, you should be able to find a way to justify it with pre-established characters. Which is another thing why the runtime is longer. The runtime feels longer and is longer because they kind of have to introduce you to each character again and where they're at. Because now they're adults, they lead different lives. They lead different lives. They
Mhm.
are different people than who they once were. Um, I thought it was really dark. I I loved it, but I thought it was really dark whenever Stanley comes out and just completely offs himself.
So I did want to talk about that because I feel like that is I'll use this as the transition from the negatives into positives because my thoughts on the Stanley situation is both a negative and a positive. One, I really like how there's actual consequence in this movie.
Yes.
Obviously, you have the Stanley thing and Eddie dying. That I'll
Yes.
talk about in the positive side. Not that I want Eddie to die, but I like that it happened because it helps further
Yes.
consequence and makes it feel a lot more consequential than I felt like the first movie was.
Yes.
But with Stanley, I understand where they're coming from, and I do like some of the setup. I just don't know if I love the explanation in
Sure.
terms of, oh, I wanted to remove myself from the board, so I killed myself. I'm like,
Yeah.
you're a married man with a life and with a wife and a life, and I don't know if he has kids, but like that's a
Sure.
little bit that's a lot. I don't love that explanation. I
I
would
hear
have
what you're saying.
I would have rather the explanation that we got before that in terms of, oh, he was the weakest link and he got first. I really liked that explanation and I felt like that made a lot more sense in terms of, oh, he was the weakest link, he got first, Pennywise got to him. Then they tried to not retcon it, but further explain it with the letter in terms of, no, he actually didn't get got first. He remembered, so he killed himself. I don't know if I love that choice, though. I don't know if you agree or not, but
Um, I don't fully hate it, but I don't know. Hold ask the question one more time just so I fully understand what you're saying. I think you said it clear enough. I'm just trying to like fully
with the
grasp
way
what you're
that
saying.
with the way that they at the end of the movie explain why Stanley ended up dying, we
Yes.
get two different explanations. One earlier in the movie where it's he was the weakest link. Pennywise got to him first, and therefore he died first.
Yes.
Then they kind of retroactively go, no, he actually didn't get got first. He just accepted that he was the weakest link and couldn't actually do anything to help further their journey. So therefore, he took himself out of the equation, aka he killed himself. I
Right.
don't love that explanation.
I actually do because it fits the character really well. You know, I don't like the message behind it. I don't like the message that it leaves of like, oh, if you're just so scared to fight battle, take the easy road out. I don't like that. But it adds a very interesting aspect to the movie that I wasn't expecting to happen. And without that, I don't really know what they would have done with Stanley either way anyway, you know? And I think this happens in the book. I don't actually know, but I like the execution of how it's revealed because it adds that last thing on the end where it's like, man, you took your own life because you didn't want to come back and fight it because you were as scared as you were, but you knew it had to happen, so you just took yourself off the board entirely and did this. You know, I have a love hate relationship with it, but I prefer it more than not having it because I don't know what they would have done with Stanley. In all honesty,
I guess I understand it from a perspective of yes, it makes sense with how cowardly he was in the first movie. He was the one that didn't want to go into the house. He was the weakest link. I'm just thinking of it in the sense of this is a man who ultimately, up until this point, forgot about all of these events, presumably because the rest of them also forgot, and has
yeah,
now moved on, lived a life, gotten married, and then one day just up and decides, you know what, I don't want to face my past. I'm just gonna kill myself.
sure,
I just I wish we would have gotten a little bit more. Now, I will say, maybe it's just because of how abrupt the explanation felt. Because I think his reasoning makes sense. I want to make that
sure,
clear. Like, I do think his reasoning makes sense. I just feel like the way that they went about, I don't know. There's just something like, I wish we got a little bit more with Stanley before he made the decision to show his fear and the reason why he went through with it. But I guess the reason why they didn't is because then it would have revealed that he killed himself and they wanted to hold that till the end.
sure, yeah. Um, I don't know. Again, I have a love hate relationship with it. I don't hate it, but I just don't think they had a better option, truthfully. And again, I know. Well, I know it's also how Stephen King probably wrote it too. So if that's how he wrote it, that's what's gonna happen. I don't know. It's just weird to me. Eddie's death is a whole different thing, though. I love the
I'm
way
s-
that
I'm so happy that they had actual consequences, what I'll say.
Yes.
Did I want Eddie to die? No, I loved
No.
Eddie. Eddie was definitely a good character. He
But it added
was
stakes. It
but
did.
it really added consequence and stakes, and it made it feel a lot more real, which I guess if you want to justify, like, oh, it's easier to justify killing an adult character than it is killing a child. No, they killed a child in this movie, which I guess that's another, like, this is another thing, like that transition from negative to positive, because I have mixed feelings about that whole sequence, because it does significantly help pay off Bill's regret and guilt for not being able to help Georgie and feeling
Yeah.
responsible for Georgie's death. So then there's another kid who dies in front of him. And
Yeah.
that was probably the most terrifying sequence in the movie,
Yes.
in terms of, like, I genuinely felt horror because of the way that, like, Pennywise is banging his head against the glass and we're stuck in this cube and there's nothing that Bill can do. All of that stuff was really well done. Maybe it's just because the child actor wasn't as convincing to me, no offense.
Maybe.
I
Yeah.
I just feel like there was something missing in that scene, just to make it perfect. Like, I loved the sequence and I felt terrified by it. I just feel like I needed something a little bit more to love this sequence as much as I feel like it would have deserved.
Well, and there is a there is a theory out there, and I've heard this from various different people, is that the kid was never real the whole time, and that he actually was planted by Pennywise to begin with, and that
That's I actually thought that as well. That's not like, that's something that I did think about, in terms of, like, why is this kid just mysteriously showing up and directing, and then he just dies all of a sudden, and there, I guess that's the other thing, is like, there was consequence with the kid's death, but the consequence didn't feel like, we kind of just moved on from the kid dying. Like, a kid just brutally died in this, like, haunted house. We just kind of, like, move on
yeah,
really quickly from it. But then again, we move on so that we can go into the set, like, the actual crescendo of the movie, because right
yes,
after this is where we move into the terrifying end of this movie.
correct. Um, I don't know, man. I also want to talk about Alexander Skarsgård here. He does great with what he's given, but Pennywise, other than being just like a horror threat, doesn't really have much to do this film. Like
He's
he's
a
actually,
lot less in this. He's in this movie a lot less
which I'm
in.
fine with if they're going to focus on the character development, which they do. Again, I don't hate the story of this movie. I really enjoy the story of it. I just think that there's a lot less horror aspect. Like I said, it's very bloated. And then I know we made the joke earlier about how I like how the first movie doesn't really have a lot of exposition. There's an exposition lore dump in this movie that I was not expecting, nor did I really want.
I liked the mystery behind Pennywise a lot more than I liked the explanation behind Pennywise.
Sure. Yeah, I can
Yeah,
agree with
I
that.
think that's definitely something, in terms of, like, keep Pennywise this fear monster. Keep Pennywise this pseudo unknown fear monster that, here's the thing, you can end this movie the same exact way, in terms of they're less fearful, therefore they depower Pennywise. Like, all of that worked really well, because I feel like it makes sense, especially given how they ended the first movie. And it also kind of like, not recontextualizes, but, like, in the first movie, the reason why they weren't able to defeat Pennywise is because they were genuinely still scared. As much as they put on masks to be like, oh, we're strong, they're also still scared kids. Now in the second movie, they're adults and they're able to overcome that trauma a little bit better and more maturely, in a way. So
Yeah,
therefore, they're able to easily actually finalize Pennywise. However, you could have done that same exact thing
yeah.
without making him an alien from space, and that would have removed a lot of that exposition dump that made the movie feel a little bit more bloated. Now, I will say, without the alien stuff, you would have had, again, the same problem in the second movie as you did in the first movie, which would be Mike just isn't in the movie, because the only reason Mike plays a bigger role in this movie is because he is that exposition dump. He's the conduit
Sure.
for the exposition dump.
Right. Right. Um yeah, and again, I like Mike better in the second movie just because they do give him more, but sometimes giving more doesn't always mean it's better. It just I mean, I guess technically here it is, but like it's okay. I'm gonna go ahead and give my final thoughts on this because
That's
it's like,
fast.
look,
Well,
because It Chapter 2 is just so like I don't want to talk bad about it because there is like truly there isn't anything bad about it. There's just disappointing things that don't need to be there. There's nothing here that makes it like the journey unworth it. By the end of this film, you are emotionally satisfied by everything.
do you feel like every character got a good payoff for their story?
I do think every character got a good payoff for the story. Like actually of all franchises that I've seen, this franchise does end with a very well wrapped together payoff for everybody. Bill goes back and finishes his book. Mike finally can move on from Derry now that it is put to rest. Beverly, Ben live on. Richie accepts who he is and goes back to the one thing he was good at, which is comedy. Obviously Eddie doesn't really make it, nor does Stanley. But for the people we have who are left standing, it's a really good emotional core and it's a really good ending. It's part of the reason why I rewatch these every year is because of that. I want to feel that payoff at the end, and they do pay it off. So it's really nicely done.
Yeah, I
Um,
do I do think that all the characters got a really nice send off, and all the payoffs make sense in terms of where the character was going. I will say the one character that I don't want to keep complaining about Mike. I love the way that his character ends in terms of finally being able to move on from Derry and just leave. Him being the character to stay behind in Derry felt a little weird to me. Maybe I just don't understand his character as much as I understand the other ones. But him being the character that decided to stay behind felt a little bit of a weird choice. Now, I don't know. The only other character that I could think of that would make sense would be Bill to stay
yeah,
ultimately, because he was ultimately the one that was the most connected and gung ho about it, and he's the
yeah,
one that initiates the pact.
yeah,
So, but with with all the characters, I feel like because the movie is bloated, or longer, I should say, you do get a chance to flesh them out a lot more and give them their individualized moments. I just want to point out, just because I do kind of find it funny that Eddie ends up just marrying basically his mom.
yeah. No,
That
it's so funny.
like, she even kind of looks like that was I almost thought it was the same actor for a second.
No, that's because it is. It's the same actor.
Wait, that as it is?
It's the same actor. It's
Oh,
the
that's
joke.
hilarious. That's hilarious.
It is the same
Okay.
actor.
Yeah, but I feel like all of, like, that, I guess those callbacks, like, the sequence of Eddie going down and facing his fears with his mom. Again, that was one of those moments that was a little less terrifying because of the use of CGI, but also still terrifying at the same time, because it bends the reality between flashback and like happening in the moment, because this
Yeah,
movie is a lot of flashback to moments that didn't even happen in the first movie, like the
sure.
clubhouse, for instance. Like, we didn't get anything with the clubhouse. Like, that confused me for a second, because they're like, oh, this flash, or like this clubhouse that we all spent time in, and I was like, what do you mean? But it was a clubhouse that they spent time in after the fact. It wasn't
Yeah,
something that was supposed to be set up in that movie. And then I was like, oh, okay, this shows that they were all still friends. And then you obviously have the setup in the clubhouse of the, oh, do you think we'll still be friends after all this goes down and we all move
right.
on with our lives? And that is another, like, existential question that I feel like everyone asks when they move on from any point of their life, whether it's moving towns, moving states, leaving college, leaving high
Yeah,
school, in terms of like, who are you actually going to keep up with and how is your life going to change over being
sure,
separated?
sure. Um, yeah, I this film just it really hits hard on the emotional beat. And it's weird because the movie itself isn't perfect, but it still hits hard anyway. It's actually one of the rare cases where I would say it's not perfect, but the emotional beats hit so well that you constantly want to rewatch it and you really don't care that the imperfections are there. I constantly find myself watching this every year for that reason. I'm going to watch chapter 2 at some point, probably today, just because now we're talking about it and I want to watch it. I already watched chapter 1 earlier. And yeah, I think that there is a care that was put behind every single filmmaker and every person who had a part to play in this film had care for it. There wasn't one person who said, "Let's take the easy way out." They all did their homework, and it turned out to be a pretty fun adventure from start to finish, at the very least.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's good. And the focusing on the characters and less on the horror, some of it works, some of it doesn't. The fantastical elements are just not as meaningful. I feel like they were a little bit of a shoehorned in unnecessary explanation for an otherwise terrifying villain. I
Sure.
think that ultimately, I'm going to say this, and I don't know how true it is because I'll need to read the book. Movie one, like it, chapter one works really well as a movie. It is a
Mm,
phenomenally terrifying, genuine good movie. I think it chapter 2 might work better as a book. I
I
think
agree.
that I would need to read the book, but I feel like all or most of my complaints, I would hope, would be able to be solved in a book format
Yeah.
because one, you don't have the bad CGI. You don't have to worry about actors not always giving as glorious of performances with certain elements. And you don't have to worry about time constraints as much
Yeah.
because the It book is long. So I would
It's long.
assume that there is a lot more substance in the book than we were even able to get in a nearly 3-hour movie. So
Sure. Yeah.
I have a feeling that for a when you're focusing on the horror elements and it's genuinely terrifying in the first movie, that works really well as a horror movie because horror does work well in books, but seeing it and getting the jump scares and getting those gruesome, terrifying moments on screen work really, really well. With It Chapter 2 removing a lot of those more horror focused elements in lieu of going a little bit more big bombastic with the alien,
Yeah.
that is where I feel like it doesn't it's not that it doesn't need to be a movie, I just feel like it probably works better as a book. I don't know where I was going with that, but I think ultimately that's kind of my thoughts on that. And maybe I'll change
Yeah.
my tune. I wanna read the It book now. Like, if anything, It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2 really made me wanna read the book. So,
So here's my last question to you, and I just want to know what would you ever watch this movie again just because?
It Chapter 1, maybe. It Chapter 2, I don't know, to be honest. Like, I
Yeah.
genuinely like It Chapter 1, if I were to be like, "Hey, like, let's watch a horror movie together," and it was like a rewatch, or I was like someone was like, "Oh, like, what horror movie should I watch?" Like, granted, I've watched, like, 4, so I don't have a big repertoire, but out of all the horror movies, It Chapter 1 is the best horror movie that I've seen. It got me the most scared. It did a really good job with setting up characters. It was well paced. There were some it's far from perfect, but it is a very good horror movie. It Chapter 2 I feel like is just if it was just a little bit shorter, and it removed some of those elements that I didn't like as much, I would be more inclined to watch it. But because you're already asking me to commit basically 3 hours of my time for that second movie, I feel
Sure.
less inclined to be chomping at the bit to go watch the second one again.
Sure. Yeah. No, I hear what you're saying. Um, yeah, I don't know. I like both films. I watch them every Halloween. I'm glad I got to share them with you because of all the horror films I've seen, I was like, these would probably be the best ones that he would want to watch. I will make you watch other horror movies, but you're not going to like them nearly as much.
Yeah, I know. We're gonna be watching when Scream 7 comes out, I'm gonna have to watch 6 Scream movies.
Well, and technically, Stranger Things is also a horror too, so
Yeah, but I don't
it's become
I
more of a sci-fi series.
Stranger Things is about as horror as It Chapter 2 is, which is still horror. Or I should say It Chapter 2 or Stranger Things is about as horror as the end of It Chapter 2. Because
Yeah,
it's scary, but it's a lot more alien, big, bombastic, over the top in a way ending, as opposed to It Chapter 1, which is a lot more of a, I don't want to say grounded horror, but it genuinely terrified me a lot more, despite, ironically enough, not having nearly as much consequence as the second movie does, which is where the horror does shine a little bit more in the second one, is simply by having the consequence.
sure. Yeah. Anyhow, that concludes our review for It Chapter 1 and It Chapter 2. Brandon, any final regards to the audience before we wrap up the episode?
I'm trying to pull up what next week is supposed to be. It's weird. It'll be Predator Badlands, but
Yes.
it's weird because we're not watching these movies for like 2 weeks because we're
It's like 2
pre-recording
weeks. Yeah,
this.
yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it is going to be Predator Badlands, and currently we have on the docket for Frankenstein. There might be a conversation about changing that out because originally this week, before we realized that Carson was going to be out of town, was supposed to be Star Wars Visions. There
Yeah,
might be some conversation about swapping things around. If not, I will still be reviewing Star Wars Visions on the TikTok. So you will still get a review of Star Wars Visions either way. It just either will be on the podcast a week after it comes out, or it'll be as it comes out on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. But it
sure.
definitely absolutely confirmed Predator Badlands, which not a horror movie per se, but ironically enough, another horror adjacent thriller style action movie, I guess.
Sure. Sure. Well, let's put a pretty bow on our first ever Halloween special. I'm so happy I get to call it that. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thanks for so much for listening. If you like what you heard, you like what you saw, give us a like, give us a follow, support us. You can find us on all streaming platforms. I mean, we are quite literally everywhere. Apple Podcast, Amazon Podcast, Spotify, YouTube, you name it, we are on it. You can find us on all social media platforms at Nerdy Nimrods. Oh boy, another good episode, another good week. Thanks for tuning in, thanks for listening, and as always, ladies and gentlemen, stay nerdy.